There's a moment that happens at almost every work conference, and if you've been to one recently, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the networking dinner on the second night, the one where everyone loosens up, the wine flows freely, and the conversation inevitably drifts toward money. Not directly, of course. Nobody sits down and announces their salary, but it happens in layers. Someone mentions they just upgraded to a larger home in a better neighborhood. Someone else pulls out a phone that came out 2 weeks ago. A colleague across the table starts describing the business class flight she took to get there, laughing about how she can't go back to economy after trying it once. And slowly, without anyone saying a single number out loud, a financial hierarchy gets established in the room. You can feel it. And if you're the person at that table who flew coach, who's still on last year's phone, who rents a perfectly fine apartment in a perfectly average part of town, something quiet happens inside you. Not panic, not quite, but a low hum of doubt. A question that doesn't quite form into words but sits in your chest anyway. Am I behind? That feeling is one of the most financially dangerous things that exists. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's subtle. It doesn't scream at you. It just nudges. And those nudges, over time, are responsible for more destroyed financial futures than any stock market crash ever was. Because that feeling is what makes a person go out the following weekend and book a trip they can't afford. It's what makes someone walk into a dealership and lease a car that stretches them thin every single month. It's what makes an otherwise disciplined person slowly start to drift toward the performance of wealth rather than the construction of it. And here's the thing, nobody at that dinner table is going to tell you. Several of those people describing their upgrades and their business class flights are in serious financial trouble. Not the kind that shows, the invisible kind. The kind where the credit card balance never quite hits zero, where the savings account exists technically but never really grows, where retirement feels like something to figure out later because right now there are appearances to maintain. Real financial intelligence doesn't announce itself at dinner. It doesn't post on social media. It doesn't lease a vehicle to signal a status it hasn't actually earned. Real financial intelligence is quiet. It's methodical. And most of the time, it looks completely unremarkable from the outside, which is exactly why the people who have it often feel like they're losing, even when they're winning by a significant margin. So today I want to walk you through 3 specific quiet signs that you are actually financially smarter than most of the people around you, including some of the ones who look like they have it all figured out. These aren't flashy signs. They won't make for good Instagram content. But they are the actual predictors of long-term financial success, backed by behavioral research and the patterns of people who genuinely build lasting wealth. The first quiet sign is that you instinctively pause before spending, and that pause has gotten longer over time, not shorter. This sounds almost too simple to be meaningful, but follow the psychology here, because it goes deeper than it appears. Most consumer spending decisions are made in what researchers call the affective state, meaning they're driven by emotion, social pressure, or the immediate desire for relief or pleasure. The purchase of the new laptop, the dinner out on a Tuesday, the spontaneous weekend trip booked after a hard week, these decisions feel rational in the moment, but are almost never the result of genuine deliberate thinking. They're responses to emotional states, and consumer culture has been engineered, with extraordinary precision, to shorten the gap between desire and purchase to as close to zero as possible. One-click ordering, buy now, pay later, pre-saved card information, digital wallets. Every single one of these innovations is designed to eliminate friction, because friction is the enemy of impulsive spending, and impulsive spending is the engine of consumer debt. When you naturally pause before buying something significant, when there's an internal process that kicks in before the checkout button gets clicked, you are operating against an entire economic system designed to stop you from doing exactly that. That's not a small thing. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that introducing even a modest time delay between desire and purchase reduced unnecessary spending by nearly 24% among participants. The pause is the wealth-building mechanism. And what makes this sign particularly telling is the second part, that the pause has gotten longer over time, because that's the direction of financial maturity. Most people go the other way. As income grows, as credit limits expand, as the social circle upgrades, the pause gets shorter. Confidence in the ability to afford something replaces the question of whether it should be purchased at all. The financially intelligent person develops the opposite reflex. More money available creates more deliberate consideration, not less. Think about 2 people, both 34 years old, both earning around $95,000 per year. Marcus has been in that income range for about 3 years. When he got the raise, he upgraded his apartment, added a car payment, started going out more. Each individual decision seemed justified. He could afford it, but those decisions compounded. His monthly fixed expenses now run about $5,800. He has roughly $1,100 left over each month after taxes and expenses, and most months something comes up that absorbs most of that. His savings rate is somewhere around 4%. Then there's Priya, Same income bracket, same city. When she received a meaningful raise 2 years ago, she sat with it for a month before changing anything. She moved $600 more per month into her brokerage account and increased her 401k contribution by 3%. Her apartment is fine but not impressive. Her car is 4 years old and paid off. Her monthly fixed expenses are around $3,600. She saves and invests close to 28% of her gross income without it feeling painful, because she structured her life before lifestyle inflation had a chance to take hold. Over the next 15 years, assuming an average market return of 7.5%, Priya's consistent investment of roughly $26,500 annually compounds to approximately $720,000. Marcus, investing his $1,100 per month when he can, reaches somewhere around $142,000 in the same period. Same income, a $578,000 difference, built entirely on the presence or absence of that pause. The second quiet sign is that you think in terms of what money becomes, not just what it buys. This is one of the most significant cognitive differences between people who build wealth and people who consume it, and it shows up in small decisions constantly. When most people evaluate a purchase, the mental math is straightforward. Do I have the money? Do I want the thing? Yes and yes, therefore I buy it. The cost of the item is evaluated in absolute terms. A $400 jacket costs $400. A $650 weekend trip costs $650. The transaction is complete in their mind the moment the card is swiped. Financially intelligent people run a different calculation automatically, often without even realizing it. They see the $400 jacket and their brain translates it into its opportunity cost over time. That $400 invested in a low-cost index fund and left untouched for 18 years at a 7% average annual return becomes roughly $1,340. The jacket doesn't cost $400. It costs $1,340 in future wealth. That reframe doesn't mean they never buy the jacket, but it means the decision gets made with full information rather than just the sticker price. This way of thinking is called future value orientation in behavioral economics, and research consistently shows it is one of the strongest predictors of long-term financial health. A landmark study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that individuals who naturally applied future value thinking to everyday purchases accumulated significantly more wealth over a 20-year period than those who evaluated costs only in present terms, even after controlling for income differences. The numbers were striking. The future value thinkers had median net worths roughly 2.3 times higher than their present value counterparts at the same income level. The gap wasn't income, it was cognition. It was the habit of asking not just what does this cost today, but what does this cost me in the future I'm building. Here's where the social comparison element gets interesting. The people around you who are spending freely are almost never running this calculation. They are operating entirely in present value thinking, which is the financial equivalent of only looking at the road directly in front of you while driving at highway speed. It feels fine right up until it doesn't. Consider someone like Jerome, 41 years old, senior project manager, pulling in $112,000 per year. From the outside, Jerome looks extremely comfortable. He drives a well-maintained luxury sedan. Leased, he lives in a newer apartment in a desirable part of the city. He wears quality clothes, takes a real vacation every year, and goes out regularly. His colleagues assume he's doing well, but Jerome has $14,000 in credit card debt spread across 3 cards, $6,200 in a savings account that he dips into regularly, and $48,000 in his 401k after 12 years of working. His net worth, accounting for the car lease liability and his debt, is somewhere around $31,000. He's 41. His visible life and his actual financial position are almost completely disconnected. Now compare that to someone like Diane. Same age, similar income at $108,000. Diane's life looks considerably more modest. She drives a 6-year-old sedan she owns outright. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment that she's had for 4 years. She doesn't post much about dining out or travel, but Diane has $189,000 in retirement accounts, $34,000 in a taxable brokerage account, $18,000 in an emergency fund, and 0 consumer debt. Her net worth is approximately $241,000. At their current trajectories, Diane retires comfortably at 60, with a portfolio likely to exceed $1.4 million. Jerome reaches 60 with somewhere around $310,000, which at standard withdrawal rates provides roughly $12,400 per year in retirement income. The gap between them isn't talent, luck, or even income. It's entirely the way each of them thinks about what money becomes. The third quiet sign is that financial conversations make you curious rather than anxious, and you've started to find genuine satisfaction in your own restraint. This one is subtle, but it matters enormously. Most people in consumer debt culture have a complicated and largely avoidant relationship with their own finances. Looking at account balances, reviewing credit card statements, thinking seriously about retirement projections. These activities produce anxiety, so they get avoided. The financial picture stays blurry because clarity feels threatening, and because the picture stays blurry, nothing changes. The avoidance is self-reinforcing. Financially intelligent people have crossed a threshold where the relationship with money becomes one of curiosity rather than dread. They look at their numbers regularly because the numbers are either improving, and that's satisfying, or they reveal something that needs adjusting, and that's interesting. Either way, engagement beats avoidance. And research from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority found that people who reviewed their financial accounts at least monthly had median emergency savings nearly 4 times higher and median retirement balances nearly 2.8 times higher than those who reviewed accounts quarterly or less. Engagement with your finances is itself a wealth-building behavior, but the second part of this sign is equally important: finding genuine satisfaction in restraint. Not performing satisfaction, not telling yourself you should be happy about skipping the expensive thing while secretly resenting it, but actually experiencing the act of not spending as a form of quiet confidence. This is a psychological shift that takes time to develop, and not everyone gets there. But when it happens, it fundamentally changes the internal experience of financial discipline. It stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like integrity. There's a name for this in positive psychology. It's called values alignment, the state where your daily actions match your long-term intentions so closely that even the sacrifices feel meaningful. When you pass on the overpriced weekend getaway, not because you can't afford it, but because you've decided your future matters more to you than a short-term experience, and that decision produces a quiet satisfaction rather than quiet resentment, you have crossed into a fundamentally different relationship with money than most people ever achieve. Think about what this looks like from the outside versus the inside. From the outside, someone who exhibits this sign looks cautious, maybe even boring. They say no to things regularly. They don't seem particularly excited about consumer products. They don't talk about their purchases or their lifestyle upgrades very much. From the inside, something completely different is happening. They have a growing sense of security that isn't dependent on the economy, their employer, or external validation. They are watching their net worth climb consistently. They sleep well because they're not one paycheck away from panic. And they've developed a kind of long-game clarity that makes the short-term social comparisons feel genuinely irrelevant, not as a coping mechanism, but as a true shift in perspective. Let me give you the projection that makes all of this concrete. 2 people, both 33 years old, both earning $88,000. The first, let's call him Tyler, has a lifestyle that matches his income. He spends comfortably, invests around 6% of his gross income, carries about $8,000 in revolving credit card debt, and generally feels good about his financial life because his visible lifestyle is solid. He saves approximately $5,300 per year. The second person, let's call her Amara, lives noticeably below her means. She invests 24% of her gross income across her 401k, a Roth IRA, and a taxable account. She carries 0 consumer debt. She spends intentionally and without apology. She saves and invests approximately $21,100 per year. At 7% average annual returns over 22 years, Tyler reaches age 55 with approximately $290,000. Amara reaches age 55 with approximately $1,150,000. They started at the same place. The entire difference is behavioral, not luck, not inheritance, not a higher salary, behavior. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The signs of real financial intelligence are quiet because real financial intelligence is fundamentally incompatible with performance. You cannot simultaneously be optimizing for how your financial life looks to other people and how it actually develops over time. Those two things pull in opposite directions, and every person reading this has to choose, consciously or by default, which one they're actually building. If you pause before spending, if you think in terms of what money becomes rather than just what it buys, if financial conversations make you curious rather than anxious, and you've started to find satisfaction in your own restraint, then you are operating at a level of financial intelligence that most people in your immediate social circle will never reach. Not because they can't, but because the social environment makes it extremely difficult, and most people are not willing to look less impressive in the short term in order to become genuinely free in the long term. You are. So here's what I want you to do right now. First, look at the last 3 significant purchases you made, and ask yourself honestly whether you ran a future value calculation before each one, not to judge the decision, but to understand your own default thinking. That awareness alone will start to shift your patterns. Second, calculate your current net worth if you haven't done it recently. Assets minus liabilities, everything included. Write it down. That number is your actual scorecard, not your apartment, not your car, not your wardrobe. Third, Think about the last time someone questioned one of your financial decisions, a choice you made that someone else found unnecessary or overly cautious. Write that down too, and next to it, write the words, "This is how wealth is built," because it is, and the people who questioned it will, in 15 years, be working while you are free. Comment below and tell me which of these 3 signs resonates most with where you are right now. There are more people in this community making quiet, disciplined, intelligent financial decisions than you probably realize, and sometimes the most powerful thing is simply knowing you're not alone. If this connected with something real for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep building this kind of clarity every week, subscribe. This is the work. Let's keep doing it.